This is History Myths and Myth Conceptions, and today's myth conception is historical Socrates. And now we are venturing into the territories bordering on blasphemy. As you all know, there is this so-called Homeric question, the debate about the authorship of the Iliad and the Odyssey, and the historicity of Homer. At the same time, there is the lesser-known Socratic problem. Is it possible to reconstruct the philosophical views of Socrates? What do we actually know about this man? And can we consider him a historical figure at all? The very fact of existence of these two problems makes you think about many things. One of the most important books in human history, and the oldest surviving in its entirety, is attributed to a man who most likely never existed at all, and for whom there is no biographical data. One of the most prominent philosophers in human history, whose name divides ancient philosophy into what came before Socrates and what came after him. Well, at least he has some kind of biographical data, and he probably existed in some form. But what the historical Socrates has to do with the legendary and almost mythical Socrates we all know and love? That's a big question. Everything is overshadowed by the fictional character Socrates, primarily invented by Plato, and often used as an alter ego of Plato in his works. To put things simply, here's the situation. We get most of our information about Socrates and his views from the works of Plato and Xenophon. Both claim that Socrates was their teacher. Both use him as a fictional character. Obviously, Xenophon's Socrates and Plato's Socrates differ from each other, although not very much. The only possible exception here is probably the Apology of Socrates, two works, one written by Plato, the other by Xenophon. These two works deal with the same event, tell more or less the same story, and do not contradict each other very much. It should be noted that there is another work that shares the name, Plato's Symposium and Xenophon's Symposium, but it describes two different events, fictional events. One of the most famous and amusing disparities between two versions of Socrates lies in Xenophon's assertion that Socrates actually demanded payment from his students for his tutorship. Plato gives the opposite information, which opens the door for the joke that Socrates charged only Xenophon. In general, any real, any authentic information about Socrates from primary sources, those attributed to individuals who supposedly lived at the same time as Socrates, well, it is limited by these quote-unquote accounts of Plato and Xenophon. We also have some almost negligible fragmentary evidence. We have a much later and not very reliable digest of ancient philosophy by Diogenes Laertius. We have many references to Socrates from later periods when he became a folklore character. We have Aristotle, who thought Socrates was a real person and not just a fiction, which is, well, good to know. We have Aristophanes, who made Socrates one of the characters of his comedy. But relying on his malicious caricature, you can hardly reconstruct the historical Socrates. As we all know very well, Socrates didn't leave anything in writing, not a single line of text. Relying on all the evidence, the most common view is that once there was a man called Socrates, he lived in Athens, and he died in 399 BC. Well, that's it. How this person is related to the legendary Socrates, who appeared in literary works after the death of real Socrates, well, you can have different opinions. People sometimes use the phrase that Socrates is a fictional character, for the very reason that it is true. When almost 99% of information about a person is works of fiction, which are not even disguised as historical works or anything, we can hardly see the real prototype. Sometimes you can even hear a radical opinion that the very existence of a prototype for Socrates is highly questionable. To a certain extent, the problem was created mostly by Plato. who set himself the incredible task of presenting to the world a new epic hero, an intellectual hero opposed to the traditional Homeric characters. The task was accomplished so brilliantly that Plato's fictional Socrates became the model of the sage and probably the second most important philosopher in human history. The first was Plato himself. Plato's Socrates was the character the world needed, and the world was more than happy to believe that this Socrates was real.